It's been several days now since the great blackout in Spain of 2025, actually Spain, Portugal, and the south of France, and we have more questions than answers. Guys, welcome to the channel The Modern Survivalist. As I say in all of my videos, this is the right place to get prepared. If you're interested in realistic, practical preparedness for emergencies, for disasters, for life itself, well, you have a ton of content already. I always mention that you have my books in the links there below. Surviving the Economic Collapse, Street Survival Skills. You have the French versions and Spanish versions of my books, which will really help you get a lot better prepared for this kind of scenario. And what scenario is that? Well, we saw what happened in Europe when there was a blackout for a few hours, right? It was nationwide in Spain, nationwide in Portugal, south of France. So it was pretty, it was considerable. Yet, it was not the disaster that it could be. And this is mostly linked to the duration of time. Again, we have no proper answer to what happened. We have a bunch of excuses that make no sense, blaming it on weather, blaming it on solar panels, then blaming it on nuclear power plants, blaming it on this and that, and then, right, they're not exactly telling us what happened. I have the suspicion that they know exactly what happened, that they just don't want to share it because it will do no good to tell people that something eventually happened in terms of foreign actors doing a sabotage attack or incident on the grid. This would actually be considered an act of war from a former nation and not exactly a kind of thing that would bring peace and tranquility to the population. So I get it. I understand. If that's the case, maybe they really don't know what's going on, right? Okay, enough of that. The only thing I do know is that based on pure logic, something that has happened before can happen again. Blackouts are something that we've seen plenty of times. Actually, where I come from in Argentina, this is basically a way of life for as long as I've been alive. Blackouts for several hours, even blackouts for several days at times. When all of this happened in Spain, there were a lot of people from South America and certainly from Argentina saying, yeah, let me know when you go 5 days without power. Then we will have a conversation of what it feels like, buddy, right? And it is true. It is true. It is the case here that people behaved very well and everyone stayed chill because it was within a day. Right? Just as soon as it was starting to get a little bit darker, then power started popping up, and that brings a lot of relief to people. Even if you don't have power yourself, you now see on the radio or on the news that, okay, so it's being restored. There's 40-50%. Eventually it will be my turn, and everything will be fine. Spanish people remained calm. They stayed having a little beer there and eating some tapas while waiting until power was restored. But what happened if it doesn't? What happened if it's all-nighter? And then the next day, okay, we're still working on it. Why? Well, because whatever is that happened could happen again, and it could be even worse. If someone actually was involved in this, they could make even more of a mess, knowing how to have a maximum impact based on the experience learned. So we just don't know. Again, these are things that have happened before. It could happen again. There's a few points that I want to go through in terms of getting prepared for this if it happens next time and maybe happens worse. Number one is the basic thing everyone at this point I wish would finally understand is you need to have a flashlight with you at all times. It is not much of an ask. It is pretty basic, pretty simple. It is just spending $10 or 12 or whatever it is on the tiniest little flashlight you want to buy from Olight or whatever well-known brand there is out there. A tiny little flashlight, keep it in your keychain at all times. This is the most essential basic EDC that people get started with. This is actually the thing that most people mention is tremendously useful, not only when you have a massive blackout, but for stuff in general. People that start carrying a pocket knife and a flashlight will mention that they don't know how they live without those things when they didn't carry them, especially the flashlight. It always turns out to be the thing that people are surprised the most about. But you need to have a flashlight with you. If there's another blackout, you're caught in an elevator, you're caught in a subway, train station, building, wherever it is that you are, if you're in an elevator, and hopefully in these places there's going to be emergency lighting, at least for a while, but what if it's not properly kept? What if it's some other problem? Or what if you're in a place where they don't have emergency lights and you're stuck in the dark? It could be many hours. It is not pleasant, the idea of being stuck somewhere in pitch darkness. That's not something that you want to go through, and you can avoid that by simply having something that is tremendously affordable, super compact and small, weighs nothing, a small flashlight in your keychain, if nothing else, all right? That's the main thing I want to get started with. Second, communication. We saw that in this case, there was, and this is probably linked because of everyone trying to call at the same time, so that was an issue. And then it is also true that even the antennas from the repeaters and cell phone towers and whatnot, they have power, they have batteries for a while. Eventually it runs out too. So maybe you have 5-6 hours or whatnot of kind of sporadic communications working, right? It could be the case. That's what happened in this case in Spain and Portugal. But it could be the same thing or maybe even worse. What you need to learn from this is, how do I communicate? Maybe with those Baofangs that you see over there all the time over my head. Well, maybe those things allow you to communicate. It's not going to be great distances, especially not in an urban setting. If you're more in the sticks or outdoors and there's not lots of buildings in between, you can communicate for several miles actually. It's actually quite surprising. If you have a straight line of sight, it could be 100 miles if everyone is just standing right in front of the other. But that's usually not the case. You have terrain, you have buildings and so on. So understand that could be an option. But then even better is have a proper plan with the people that you would like to communicate. What would you tell them? Hey, if something like this happens again, we're all going back home. We all meet in our house or at grandpa's or at aunt, whatever. You need to have this all sorted out. Keep in mind that access to the city may be impaired. Traffic lights not working, even police just not letting anyone in that doesn't live there because they just don't want to have more traffic with the problems that's being dealt with. A number of reasons why you want to clarify these things before you don't have communications. And what is it that you could do so as to work around it if you have some of these options? Number 3, food. One of the things that surprised a lot of people is, I don't have electricity, I can't cook now. And certainly, not only can I not cook, maybe the guy that I usually buy food from, he's not even working either. He has no power himself, so he's closed. How do you prepare food when you don't have electricity? Well, there's a number of ways. You can have a camping stove. You can improvise a stove yourself, like I've shown in a number of videos, even using a simple tuna can and some rubbing alcohol. That is actually surprisingly useful. You have the Trangia stove, which is basically a commercial version of something very similar. So you have options. The idea here is know what you will be doing in case of something like this happen again, if it goes on for more hours or actually even more days, right? And even better, have food that is readily, you can eat right away. Canned food, but if you're gonna plan on cooking, again, minimize that as much as you can, but have means of cooking and have the gas and the fuel that you plan to use on it. How long? I don't know. A week? That is something that is realistic. I think it is. I think it could definitely happen for a lot more time than just a few hours. Number 4, water. If you don't have electricity, you don't have pumps pumping water around here and there, and there's a very good chance that you will be left without water. And water is no joke. You can be fine for several. Humanity has subsisted for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years without electricity. No problem. Water is something else. Water, people actually get desperate over in a matter of hours if they don't have water. We've seen this before, right? Several times. So water is something you want to have a lot of water stored already, right? It's not going to be 3 days. It's going to be a couple weeks, the minimal amount of water you want to have stored. Because if this goes on for a longer period of time, you don't want to be the guy looking how much little water you have left. Couple weeks of water, it is cheap as dirt as of right now. Store it right now. And don't go mad when you don't have it in the worst possible time. Keep in mind, there's also going to be needs so to hygiene, brushing your teeth, and maybe taking a quick shower or washing your hair. All of these things, and plan accordingly. Have some of these wet wipes. Have a strategy in case you have to go without water for a longer period of time. Number 5, working. Yes, we're no longer in the Middle Ages. People these days work through the internet. Oh, but I work. Okay, yeah, fine. Maybe it's not you, but for a lot of people out there, if you don't have internet, you're not working. You're not working, you're not making money. You're not making money, you're not surviving, right? That's the way the world works right now. We rely so much on the internet that, yeah, sure, if it's for entertainment and goofing out, fine. But what about work? How is it that I work around this if I don't have internet in terms of my employment? Do I have a plan? Have I even talked about this with my partner, with my boss, with whoever it is I communicate? Have a plan in place so as to get around this, or know what is it that you're going to be doing if you don't have access to the internet for a longer period of time than just a few hours. Okay. Number 6, health. There's a number of people that rely on electricity to keep them alive in one way or another. If you have a ventilator, you need that to keep you alive, then you should find a way of keeping that thing powered when there's an outage. It could be one of the generators, one of the solar battery pack things that I've shown here before, which are pretty nice. That's going to have a certain amount of hours. Maybe that's enough for your needs. Maybe you need something else. Maybe you need a gas generator and a good amount of gas to keep it running in case of a long-term power outage. You need to see what works best for you. I think that the battery, the solar generator, as it's sometimes called, or basically it's a battery bank. If you live in a place where there's decent light, but keep in mind, it could be cloudy, it could be raining. How much power do I need, and for how long to keep me alive? For how much? For how long of a period of time? These are crucial questions you need to ask yourself and find an answer to before you're there, before you're in that spot. Because it's not going to be pleasant. It's going to be maybe even a matter of life and death. For dialysis, for ventilators, for keeping life-saving medications cold, right? You can find ways of working around these things, at least for some time, but you need to plan ahead. Don't just assume that, oh, it's going to be fine. It's going to be just a few hours. What if it's a few days, right? What if it's a week? How do you get by with that? All right. Number 7, payments, financial transactions. How is it that you get by? Well, one of the things that was mentioned in the famous European survival kit was having cash. I think it was no coincidence. I think they were talking about the famous European survival kit because they knew that there was going to be something like this happening. And it could be one place, in one country, or another. And it could be something else, right? But it makes sense that they knew there was a threat and they told you all of these things. Having cash, yeah, that's going to be very important. But also, what stores will take my cash? We saw that many stores would not, even though you had cash, because they needed power for the cashier thing, the machine. It would not work, and they would not sell stuff, right? Maybe on the smaller stores, right, in bars and local town stuff, maybe many of those did work. I know that was the case for many small mom and pop kind of stores. So know which ones you can probably count on and understand that maybe on the other ones, they will not work. I mean, if you go there somewhat often, you can even ask them, hey, would you be... No, we have... when this happened last time, we were not doing business. We just closed down and didn't do any sort of business. Okay, so I know this is not something I can count on. Maybe I get my supplies ahead of time. The other guy over there, yeah, he's all right. So you know who can count on who you can use that cash with if something like this goes down. But certainly have cash, do your local research, know where you can go with it. Finally, number 8, and this is going to be a big one, which is security. We just saw Spanish people and Portuguese people just wait calmly until power was restored. It is a sign of civility and the sense of security that has become a norm in these places, and they waited until power was restored, and that was just fine. There's no electricity. Okay, I'll just drink some cool beer while I wait for this, and then, oh, nice, when power is restored. Great. And it is nice to see people behave like that instead of, oh, wow, there's no power, right? You're grabbing a crowbar and just go looting. No, okay. But you cannot count on people staying like that long term or even medium term. If there's a day go by without power, what about the next one? What about, there's going to be honest people that will feel very desperate. There's going to be people that fall to panic. You will see things that you did not expect. You will see the worst of what people are capable of when they're desperate for water, when they're desperate for food, when they're afraid. So you need to have ways of defending yourself. No matter where you are in Europe, you have alternatives. Trust me on this. I see people comment wrongly all the time, and they're just wrong. They are just wrong. Anywhere in Europe, you can buy a shotgun. You can probably buy you can certainly buy a 22 long rifle carbine in any European country. You can buy a shotgun, semi-automatic shotguns, pump-action shotguns, depending on the barrel length. But you can have firearms everywhere in Europe. Anyone that tells you otherwise is simply lying. And the ability of buying them does not mean that it's going to be free or that it requires no paperwork. That is stupid and is dumb to say, oh, that's illegal. No, it's not illegal. You have to pay for it. That does not make it illegal. Oh, but I have to do paperwork and it's hard. Well, yeah, sure. If you buy a car, it's going to be the same thing. You will have to register that thing. You will have to pay a significant amount of money, but you very much can own a car in these countries. Well, the same goes for firearms. Get your paperwork, do whatever it is you have to do, whatever test it is, depending on where you live, but you can. And you should, because the moment people start getting desperate, you don't want to be the guy sitting in a corner in your apartment or wherever it is that you are, or your house or wherever you happen to live, waiting there with a baseball bat or a golf club, right, or a kitchen knife. Yeah, leave that shit for the movies. Trust me, when people get violent, you want to have a gun. Right? Trust me on this thing. I know what I'm talking about. You want to have a gun. Hopefully you will not have to use it, but you will be damn glad you have it. All right? Guys, that's basically it. I cover all of this stuff, of course, in my books, as I said in the start of this video. You have all of that in the links there below. For the French folks out there, you have the Survival Enforcement Économique and a bunch of other versions. See you next time. Take care.